So we've heard a lot today about scary things, about hypothetical things, about potential things, but I'm here to talk to you guys about a live company operating right now that's we raised $1.8 million in our first year. We've been live with a product in the market since last May, and this is the kind of product that you hear all the time in the news and at conferences about a use case, a real live use case. Investors like to talk about us. At every major investment fundraising thing, they always use us as a use case scenario. The World Bank invested in us and put us on their website, talk about how digital currency was really changing the face of financial transactions and digital ecosystems in Africa. So what are they talking about this use case? Because what we hear a lot about is remittances and international transfers. But what does that mean? What does a remittance really mean? And exactly how can this work? I talked to a lot of people. I guess there's two camps. One camp who says, oh yeah, this is what Bitcoin is for. And the other guys that dig really deep say, but exactly how is it going to work? How does this really make it more efficient? How does this make it more cheap? So I'm here to talk to you guys about how I view remittances and international transfers, how BitPesa itself right now, in real time, is making it work, and how we're building a new cutting-edge fintech platform to kind of change the face of payments and transfers for Africa. So when I talk about Africa right now, not to take my words out of context, I'm talking about middle Africa, the big fat part, the growing part, the scary part, the part that no one else goes to, the part that it's really hard to operate in, the part that looks a lot different than this beautiful city we're standing in right now, although some parts of your country and some parts of the sector do share a lot of common traits with us. So it's really this meaty sub-Saharan African part that I'm working in, and these are the countries we're either live in or we've incorporated in, we've run some pilots in. So this is what we're talking about when I'm talking about Africa right now. And what's the problem? Why does everybody talk about remittances as a problem? Well, the number one reason is it's really expensive to move money to and from Africa. I'm talking 12% on average to send or receive a payment to Africa. Now, in some countries like Tanzania, the price goes up to 19%, over 20% to some of the southern African countries like Botswana or Zambia or Mozambique. When you look at Southeast Asia and some of the activity happening over there, we're looking at average costs of 4 to 6%. South America, Central America, all those things that get a lot of news in North America, not even in the same scale. So why is it so expensive? What's going on over here? Let's take a look at that. Well, one is that sub-Saharan banks have really inconvenient and slow services. And I'm not going to talk to the South African banks here because, again, it's on a different planet than some of our other banking partners up north. But we're not really matching the consumer needs. We're living in booming economies. I moved to Nairobi 6 years ago. Since then, 4 forests have been cut down and 15 skyscrapers have been built between my house and my office. I mean, these are huge, booming economies. This is people with $900 smartphones. But what do their banking partners look like? And how are those banking partners perceived by global banks? Why is there such a disconnect into where the growth is happening and what kind of services are being provided? For this, I ask you guys to go look at the top 10 banks in Middle Africa and go look at their websites. They look like outdated MySpace profiles. Go ahead and try to see a bank that has a 15-country presence that's lauded by every government and every international bank as being their counterparty bank, and go look at their website. Amy and I, my CFO Amy's here, we call it the afternoon pain hour. That's the hour in the afternoon where we call one of our 4 local banks, and we try to see if any of the transactions we've made on our online banking platform have actually gone through. And let me tell you, it's not a fun hour of the day. We have a nice cup of coffee and we sit down before we take a deep breath and call customer service. We say, hey, I did 4 transactions on my online banking platform. Have any of them actually transacted? No. Can you call us every time you make a transaction on the online banking platform? Well, what's the point of the online banking platform if I have to call you? Why don't you send an email and call us and send a text and go online, and then maybe it will go through. So what's going on with these kind of inconvenient digital these processes that don't really match the digital life? And the same goes for international e-commerce. People want to buy things online, but yet my Kenyan card is not accepted on a US website. My Nigerian card doesn't work in the UK. How do I travel to South Africa in Johannesburg? We went to the Vodacom store to buy new SIM cards. We had 4 cards rejected. Now, we're Ivy educated, world traveling, amazing people. So, I mean, we're in the top 1%, And we don't even have cards that work, and we're not even out of Africa. So what's going on there? So businesses and individuals are just frustrated. There is no way that right now our infrastructure, our banking infrastructure, is fallen behind. And what has come in to take the place? Money transfer operators, Western Union and MoneyGram. Talk about a monopoly. I mean, these guys have really gotten it down. I mean, they're owning huge swaths of the market share with prices and margins that are incomprehensible in other places. But they've come in because it's a very big void, and it's very difficult to launch a business, a small business, a cutting-edge business in these markets. And if you really want to hear, take us for a drink and we'll tell you all of the many crazy stories we've had zipping around Nairobi on motorcycles, paying city council fees, dealing with lines and processes and procedures. Just getting a business started is impossible. So I can understand why there's not a lot of innovation in this space. And let's look at the environment. So I just read this awesome report by Swift, and I don't say that sentence often, but 86% of all financial transactions, transfers that have gone on the Swift network, now that's RTGS, that's all the different kinds of Swift messaging systems. 86% of them in Africa are settled outside the continent. And for those banking partners here who say, oh, we settle our own transactions or things of that nature, there are two major banks that settle almost all the transactions that happen in Africa, Citibank and Standard Chartered. Now, one of my great investors has been working in the FX business for decades. And when I first pitched to him about BitPesa, he said, oh yeah, I've been dealing with those two banks for decades. They've been really reaping a lot of the rewards because a lot of banks in Africa don't have the capability to settle locally. Now, even more interesting, almost 40% of transactions from Africa settle in USD, and that means it's automatically through the US, although 9% of commercial transactions end up there. So 30% of those transactions just ping over to the US just because that's the only place they can settle, and then go somewhere else in the world, usually Asia. Or some of them, actually 14%, come back to Africa. Now, how insane is that? We actually had someone who wanted to send us a check, and we talked to our local bank, and they said, well, we could receive a check by mail. The investor said, I'm having trouble sending over a SWIFT. Why don't I FedEx you a check? So if they were to FedEx us the check would then need to be FedExed back to the US to clear with the original bank and then back again. So a piece of paper would actually have to go across the Atlantic like twice. So what's going on here? Where has the lag in infrastructure investment been happening? And it's a very manual process. Anybody who has sent transfers from Africa to abroad here. I've been 6 years living in Kenya. For a long time, I was paid my Citibank account, where I was a very good customer for 12 years. I paid all my student loans through Citibank. But Citibank would tell me, the transfer's going to go through in 4 to 12 days. Now, if I'm running a business and I don't know where it's coming through in 4 to 12 days, how do I plan my cash flows? Sometimes my cash flows are tied up for 2 weeks out of the month. What's going on there? I mean, I just tweeted on Friday, I made an RTGS payment from my bank online on Thursday night because I missed the cutoff. So it was supposed to go out Friday morning, and the travel agent didn't receive it till Monday evening, so my tickets were canceled. And when I said, well, whose fault is that? Neither institution could tell me what was happening. Neither of them had any insight. And these are institutions that are physically sitting next to each other on the same street. How come their systems don't work? Well, they've both built proprietary management information systems with their own IT teams, homegrown systems. Now, if every institution, financial, Western Union, MoneyGram, all these banks, middle-sized banks, are building homegrown IT systems, who's controlling these IT systems? I moved to Africa to be a microfinance rating analyst. I came from Credit Suisse, where I was working in Zurich, and I moved down here to become a bank rating analyst, and I went all over the continent, every month a new country, writing a big rating report, looking at all the policies, procedures, the governance, the IT systems of banks across the region, writing reports and sending them back to the investors. And what did I find? Wild discrepancy between quality. You know, a lot of systems coming in from an Irish software system in Uganda, nobody on the ground knowing how to use it. A Nigerian using a US system that cost $1 million, nobody knows how to use the different banking modules to add on. And I'm talking big banks with big loan books. I mean, I know some very big, large banking chains that don't really know what their core banking systems do. Forget all of the employment and procedures. And for those bankers in the room who are saying, not in my bank, why don't we talk about all your different branches? Maybe not in your HQ. When you start to look at the branch network, are policies and procedures really done efficiently across that network? It's hard enough to do this in developed economies, much less places where you have internet connectivity loss, trouble with HR, management changeover happening a lot. I mean, a big problem in Kenya right now is that there's a big HR turnover issue. So it's hard to kind of keep quality over large banking networks. These are all the reasons we're struggling with this. And I've complained a lot on Twitter. I've complained a lot on Twitter about my debit and credit cards kind of constantly going down. Anyway. And part of that reason is, and then somebody said, oh, it's just your geofencing. But geofencing is something that some countries do better than others. I mean, we were just talking to Brock about when he's using his US card here, will it get blocked? But my Kenyan card is blocked every single transaction abroad. And my US card, my Citibank card, same thing. Although I've lived abroad for 10 years, every time I use it in a new country, Citibank puts a hold on my card. So it's a very manual. I have to be calling them from Norway to Estonia to Taipei to wherever I happen to be traveling. I have to find a hotline, call my Citibank number, and get it unblocked. It's a manual procedure. It's a pain point. POS systems, card issuing, customer support, all these things are really hard to roll out in these economies. And what's the opportunity if we get this right? 35 billion in retail transfers to Africa every year. I won't even tell you what the Nigeria percentage is. If anybody can figure out the Nigerian market, it's almost 20 of that 35 billion coming just to Nigeria. Plus billions of off-book transactions. We've been talking to the Red Cross, to Kiva, Give Directly. These guys send like $1 million a year just to one portion of Kenya or Tanzania. And all of them are struggling with the problems I just mentioned. Only 3% of adults right now have access to these credit cards. So how are the rest of them paying for things online? So what's the solution? I'd like to say that it's blockchain technology. Now we've heard a lot about what Bitcoin is, what Bitcoin can and cannot do. I really liked Vinny's presentation this morning because I'm not sure if it was easy to follow the middle part where he told you where he came back around to what would work and how Bitcoin really helps. But for me, to sum it up, it's in the cloud, which means you don't have to recreate it at every institution across the continent. It's in the cloud. It's open source, which means it's low cost. Companies like mine, innovative young companies who are coming up, can access cutting edge technology by some of the best developers. Just like that. And when you're looking for people to work on it, people understand it because they've worked on it before. It's double crypto key secure, so a lot of the thing that we hear about cryptography or cryptocurrencies, people think that this means it's actually like encrypted in a password like you see on these TV shows, but actually it means it's a two-key system, which is in essence a better way to do it, 2FA. Plus, the most cutting-edge fintech companies globally are using it. Not to mention the guys that have presented today, but you go to London, you go to San Francisco, all the coolest companies are using this. So what does that mean? It means I can grow my company in a very big way for a very cheap cost. It's very secure for the amount of money I've spent on it and the way it's gone, and it's fundamentally interoperable, which is a big problem in this market. So when I talk to investors and they go, I just don't see how it works, this is the most important part. This is how you build a business using this technology. Someone gave a presentation at a conference I was at where they said, think of it like software. Blockchain, Bitcoin is just software you use. I mean, for us, it's very convenient, cheap, scalable, robust software that we can then grow. By using the blockchain to notify our company when transactions are coming in and out, I no longer have to have a wire room. I don't have to have an employee sitting there checking MT103 numbers. We do not have to waste time going through poor online banking platforms. And this is the exciting stuff. So let's talk about the company that's doing it right now, which is BitPesa. So right now what our products are doing, we have a buy and send. People call us a remittance company, but we call us really, you can think of us more like a broker. People buy Bitcoin from us in Kenyan shillings, and they use it to do things like shop online, send money abroad. They do some day trading with that. It's really quite exciting. And the cool part about it is, just like any other exchange, we We offer all those products, but we are one of the fastest places on the planet to buy Bitcoin because we use mobile money for payment. So since we're so localized, it's not like we're Coinbase operating across 50 states. Coinbase in the US operates on 50 states. That's 50 different state boundaries, rules, regulations, hundreds and hundreds of different kinds of banks, different systems, all have to clear through ACH, but we're very localized. So because we're in Kenya with Kenyan bank accounts and mobile money, it's almost instant purchase. And on the send side, normally when you cash out or you sell your Bitcoin, you can only cash it or sell it to your own bank account. But since we have this very unique thing in Kenya where we have mobile money tied to national ID cards, national passports, you can actually put in a phone number and send it to anybody's mobile wallet. So instead of just withdrawing the Bitcoin yourself, I can withdraw it and send it to my grandmother. I can withdraw it and send it to 10 people. I can withdraw it and send it to all of my BitPesa employees all at once, which is quite exciting. And again, in real time. And keeping in the mind of how we're building a really low-cost, exciting, cutting-edge company, the first thing we did was we were the first people on the planet to link mobile money with Bitcoin. And the mobile money revolution in East Africa is a whole other conference worth of discussion points. I mean, 97% of people in Kenya use M-Pesa. A huge portion of the GDP goes through it. Tanzania is even better. We call it mobile money 2.0, where there's actually 3 key operators using it instead of one company. Ghana, the Philippines, Senegal, Burkina Faso, Romania just opened up, Turkey, Azerbaijan. These are all countries that have very advanced mobile money systems, so it's not just Kenya anymore. We talked about the real-time withdrawals and deposits, but the other thing is that we have really robust performance. We invested early on in a very cool proprietary way to check the blockchain for transactions, and we work with some very cool companies out in San Francisco that are doing the same thing. So we know that our peers are using the same kind of robust performance. We have unbeatable customer support, and we're all about the user experience, which is something that differs from a lot of the other financial service providers in our region. And most importantly, just to reference the discussion that we had before, we're AML KYC compliant. Being a former rating analyst, I know a lot about what banks need and want. I would disagree that you don't need to spend millions of dollars on a compliance officer because I don't think compliance is that hard. What are the rules? Follow them. Maybe you need a compliance officer if you want to structure something crazy around the rules. But the rules are really quite clear. Check the passport, get key information, check it against international databases, set limits. Don't let anybody send $1,000 every half hour to northern Kenya on the Somali border. It's quite easy to kind of prevent things from that happening, and that's what we've done. And we're working with some of the best cutting-edge companies on that. I mean, there's some really cool companies right now that make you take a live picture next to your ID and then slowly work up building your credit history. There's some really cool companies now that have global databases that are better than Interpol. All of those things can be solved, and it doesn't take an army of humans sitting in a long room manually looking over things. I totally disagree with that notion. And we're here to really meet the needs of the new digital retail and business clients that have a digital life and a digital financial service need. There's a little bit here about how we can, let me just see if this goes. I don't know if you guys can see this. Experience better than Keynote. Okay, here we go. So again, right now, we're not doing what Vinny talked about, which is hiding the Bitcoin. Right now, our users know they're sending Bitcoin. So people all over the world are actually sending through Bitcoin. A Kenyan in Canada named Kamal Bushby sends through 500 pounds a month to 4 different family members. We have an import-exporter for furniture in Brazil sending through payments to his partner here in Kenya. They know about Bitcoin, they've bought Bitcoin, and they know how to use it. The next step forward for BitPesa is removing this need. You'll no longer see a QR code. What you'll see here is a partner page telling them to make a local payment, a local bank transfer from a New York bank to a New York bank, a Danish bank to a Danish bank, a Chinese bank to a Chinese bank. And then that will get paid to us through Bitcoin and come out. So we actually have partnerships and becoming an API-led company that's actually working with partners all around the world, both retail and end business clients to send through those payments by hiding the Bitcoin in the past. Although we have been surprised about how many people globally will buy Bitcoin to use our system because they don't have any other options. So right now we talked a little bit about what the costs are. Banks taking weeks into days. We can actually add on here PayPal. PayPal is blocked from many African countries. In Kenya, PayPal works with one bank, takes 7 days to clear, and costs 9%. So it's not actually the PayPal you might know back in the US. So besides the banks and the Western Union and PayPal, there really isn't any other options. Now, somebody asked us if we were a fintech company or a financial services company. And for that I say, the difference between us, which is just a software company, and being a financial services business is our user acquisition. We are really talking to consumers all over the world. We have our COO based in London now with a whole team doing outreach. We have staff in San Francisco doing focus groups, community outreach, church leaders. We talk to diaspora all over the planet. We talk to businesses that deal with Africa. We talk to NGOs like the Red Cross. We talk to importers and exporters on both sides. And we really are making that whole distribution funnel. And this is something that's different. I mean, I think people need to realize you can't just stop at using Bitcoin technology and saying, that's it, that's our business, we use Bitcoin technology. Now, you still have to have a good business. You still have to build all those parts around your business. And I think something that sets it apart is that, you know, a Bitcoin business, a blockchain technology business, indicates that you're willing to be on the cutting edge. You're using a low-cost model, you're dedicated to ultra-low-cost products, and you're doing something really really exciting. And we don't really have that homegrown products here in Africa. We don't have that regional airline like a Virgin airline that's sexy and young and cheap and exciting and built for the consumer. And that's what BitPesa really is doing. We've got a footprint all over Africa. Most importantly, we'll have our payments institution license out of the UK, which is then going to be passported across Europe. We'll talk about that afterwards. We are going to Ghana, Cote d'Ivoire, and Senegal, and we are already incorporated in 4 other African countries. We'll be live in all 4 by the summer. And our core team has been living in East Africa for up to 8 years and has worked across the region on rolling out products and mobile money. Yeah, and that's who we are. I know there's some maybe poised to corner the market on alternative payout infrastructure in Africa. This is what we're really looking to do. I mean, there's a lot of other payment partners here and merchant providers here, but what's interesting for us is that we're really dedicated to doing this regionally. We're not looking to dominate the entire planet. We know that there's a lot of specific needs in these geographies, and we're really dedicated to understanding what those specific regional needs are. So thanks for your time, and if you guys have any other questions, I'm happy to answer them.
As the unbanked guy in Kenya, so I'll have a national ID and I'll get myself M-Pesa, I'll sign up with one of the M-Pesa things. Would I then use M-Pesa to buy the Bitcoin from your company?
Yes, so the ways you can buy Bitcoin from us right now are via a local bank transfer or by a pay bill.
But I mean, as a unbanked, so I've only got a phone and I've got M-Pesa, so I've hooked up my national ID. Can I still buy Bitcoin?
Okay, so let's talk about the word unbanked. Having worked in microfinance for a long time, this is a word that I really hate, no offense. Because what does unbanked mean? You know, do you need to actually physically go into a bank? I haven't physically been in a bank branch. Am I unbanked? Right now, I do all my banking on the phone or the internet, or at least I try. So, I mean, the difference between people who have no access to financial services, which was at 70% when I moved to Kenya in 2009, has now dropped to below 40%. So, we're seeing a problem right now, and those people that are below 40% might be considered in the nomadic part of northern Kenya or Dadaab refugee camp, which has over 2 million people living in it right now. That's not what we would consider financially active people. It's maybe people outside of the financial ecosystem. So I think the word unbanked is used a lot. Right now in Kenya, in a lot of parts, people are banked to as much as they need. If they're not banked, it's not because they couldn't get a bank account. Almost everybody with a SIM card can have a bank account, can get services. The point is that those services are not really interesting to them.
All right, so I have a telephone and I have a national ID. So I sign up for M-Pesa, can I buy Bitcoin?
Yep.
Is it a network agnostic? Must it be M-Pesa? Can I use Zap, any of the others?
Those don't exist in Kenya. In Kenya, it's only M-Pesa. It's 97% penetration. So when you go to Tanzania, yes, you can use 4 different MTO operators. But in Kenya, nobody else really uses anything but M-Pesa. So yeah, you can do that and you can get Bitcoin.
Thank you.
Is the Bitcoin that you buy, that I would buy as a customer, permanently linked to my cell phone number, or
Nope.
can I?
No, we don't have a wallet service, so it's just a payment mechanism. Think of it like your Zap or your MasterCard or whatever you guys use down here in South Africa. Essentially, you send us a payment, you receive Bitcoin to any wallet. We actually ask you which wallet, which address do you want this to be sent to, and it's sent to your blockchain address or your Coinbase address, your Circle address, or whatever your address is. So just simply a way to pay, but it's an instant way to pay in these countries.
So once you've got all of these partner sites, partner connections up, and then people in New York are paying to a New York bank, and so on and so forth, why bother with Bitcoin at all, except maybe as a final settlement eventually at the end of the month?
So how does the New York bank talk to the Kenyan bank? So what's the other option for somebody in New York to talk to a Kenyan bank? How would you get money from an agent in New York or a business in New York to a business in Kenya? As I said, right now, the only way to talk to another bank is through the SWIFT network. And I think we've discussed some of the inefficiencies with that. It's one technology that the whole planet uses, and then both banks have really kind of different ways of speaking to each other because they have different systems. So we're actually proposing to be that communication between those players. We believe we have a more efficient and cheaper way to talk to each other. So, right now the local transfers, a Citibank to Citibank transfer works relatively well right now. And a Kenyan bank transfer to Kenyan bank sometimes works well, although we had some problem. When you start to have a Kenyan bank talk to a New York bank, that's when you totally lose the plot.
I think maybe you're misunderstanding what I'm saying. If the New York to New York transfer is fine, and then you buy Bitcoin, and then Bitcoin goes to the end user, or when I make that payment to Amy gets settled in her local currency, right, to her bank account.
No, I think you're confused. So what happens is essentially Amy has dollars that she wants somebody to receive in Kenyan shillings. Amy and Amy's mother don't want to even think about Bitcoin. So forget Bitcoin. For all intents and purposes, Amy wants to pay somebody in New York, and her mother is going to receive something in Kenya. Neither of them want to deal with Bitcoin. Now, the two companies that are actually going to hold the float and settle with each other and say, hey, you pay me now, and I'll pay you later, and maybe I'll pay out Amy's mother, but you're going to pay out Jose's brother. And the way that we talk to each other is with Bitcoin, because that means it's an instant transfer, an instant notification. We don't have to wait on settlement. We move our own tokens back and forth. Just like Vinny said before, it's an internal ecosystem for businesses to talk to each other. This is what I'm excited about. This is what we believe is going to work. When we talk to TransferWise and World Remit, what they do is they send those systems around SEPA, the Single European Payment Area. The reason TransferWise is so exciting and so successful is because they have this beautiful closed loop inside of Europe where things can kind of settle very efficiently. Now, the second they get outside of SEPA, how do they talk to other banks? They have to go through counterparty banks, which then sets another layer of pricing and another time delay. So how do we make that kind of beautiful closed loop system global? I believe it's over the blockchain, where all those kind of companies, those counterparties, whether it's World Remit or TransferWise or Citibank or BitPesa or whoever it is, we talk to each other on the blockchain. And we can send transactions, and we can create user wallets instantly for pennies, much better than we can with an outdated system invented several decades ago. So even SWIFT is really looking closely at blockchain technology.
I'm not sure if I understand correctly, but do you exchange from Bitcoin to local currencies? And if you do, in what way?
Yeah, so when you buy Bitcoin, you're buying with a local currency and you're buying Bitcoin. So you're exchanging from Kenyan shillings into Bitcoin. So we are market makers, and we set the price for Kenyan shillings to Bitcoin. And then when people send us Bitcoin, we make the market for accepting that Bitcoin and settling it to KES. So we're the market makers, and if you look at other people in these markets, other players, and you look on their websites and you look at our websites, we're about 1/3 of the cost, sometimes 1/10 of the cost. The spreads are really wide because there's not a lot of liquidity. So what we do as a broker is we set a price, what we consider the best Bitcoin bid price, and then we have a margin of up to 3%. Any other questions? Okay, thanks for your time.